So again, this slide is just, there were questions that had come up about whether or not any actual staffing cuts had been made. And so this is a summary of the cuts that were made. Human resource assistant, dispatcher, inspections coordinator, highway worker, building maintenance, and 4 fire emergency management staff. Okay. On the next slide, just wanted to show the health insurance increases. So we're just going back a handful of years to 2022. And you, but
Alex, some of the viewers said that there's music playing in the background, so they're having difficulty hearing.
it's good to have people.
Yeah.
Good now? Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So this slide is intended to just give a visual representation of the increase in the health insurance costs for the town. And I think as everybody's aware, this is something that was clearly not anticipated. So if you go back to 2022, you can see that we were, well below, if you look to the left, there's a 1.4 million, which it rose to at the end of 2024. And then you can see about a $200,000 increase between 24 and 25. And then the incredibly significant increase in healthcare premiums that really precipitated us coming back to the town to request an override. You can see that growing from 1.6 million to 2.2 million in that 1-year time frame. Our understanding at this point is that while we may not be expecting that level of an increase, we're still looking at double digits going forward. And the FY26 budget breakdown, again, just a visual representation of where we have a roughly $22 million operating budget. So visually, you can see where those dollars are going. The education, our school line item represents about 34% of the total budget. I know Dr. McKenzie is here with us this evening, and she probably would want everybody to know that even though it's the largest share of the town of Hadley's operating budget, it's still, from a percentage basis, is likely below what many of our area municipalities are spending as a portion of their operating budget on education. Employee benefits, as you can see, is the next significant line item. Just a reminder that the employee benefits in the town budget are the employee benefits for all municipal employees, including the schools. Okay, so that school line item is certainly paying the teachers' salaries, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, Smith Voc tuition, all of that. But the related benefits, which typically we're looking at probably a 35 to 40% benefit burden, if I can put it that way, per employee. That is all part of the town budget. So that's in the 21.6%. Public safety next at 17%. And then you can see general government debt service, which is fixed, about 8% of the budget. Public works, human services, and culture and recreation, kind of in that order of magnitude. Next, wanted to talk about the revenue sources. Again, just very high level, big picture. The property tax levy absolutely represents the majority of the revenue generation for the town at just shy of 73%. Next, we have something called local receipts that we're actually going to talk a little bit more about. State aid for Hadley is 4.8%. Again, many other municipalities receive far more in state aid and, quite frankly, rely more on state aid than the town of Hadley does. And then we have a small portion going to the enterprise receipts, which would be water, sewer, and Hadley Media. All right. And then we just wanted to provide, this is a new slide that was produced as a result of some of the comments and questions at the last listening session. This is a breakdown of local receipts. So begin in order of magnitude, you can see that green on the left-hand side is I'm going to call it a catch-all. But the major components of local receipts, meals excise tax, rooms excise from the hotels, cannabis, and select board. Basically, half of the local receipts that we're showing here are generated by commercial property, not residential property. And we would argue that within that other local receipts line item, all of the inspection fees are part of that green. And depending on any given year, it's likely that the majority of the inspection fees are also driven by commercial property. So we're bringing that up for a reason, because there's been a lot of discussion about the split, potential split tax rate between residential and commercial. And we just wanted to illustrate as a fact that commercial properties are kind of, punching above when it comes to the local receipts that goes in addition to the property taxes that they're paying. That it at this point?
Well, I added on to the slides that Linda presented last time.
Mhm.
If y'all want to address them, but I just had them, I just threw them on if you wanted.
This is for the 27 budget week. We haven't really gone too far. Do we really want to go through it tonight?
You don't have
I
to.
don't think so.
Not unless it comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. We will be presenting, making final decisions with select board hopefully this week or early next week. And I think the by-board meeting is on next Wednesday. Is that right?
Yes, right.
Where we will then have the full budget and go through it. But I mean, if you want me to go through the revenue situation, I have to do that, or we can just move on and see.
Yeah, let's wait and see, Linda.
Yeah.
Okay, you're it. That's it.
That's it. Done.
Okay. Anybody with any questions, comments, feel free to come up. And please tell us who you are when you get up there.
So I'm John Kinchla, 206 Bay Road, and a member of the fire department as a call force member. As you can see, there's a lot of us here today, and some are from Hadley and some are from other towns, which is nice to see because our situation here in Hadley affects the towns around us pretty significantly. I don't have any magic bullet to generate more revenue outside of an override for the fire department. And I think that that's something that absolutely needs to be done. Our current situation is unsafe, and it's creating a situation in town that, opens the town up to legal liability. The way we're operating right now is, if you take similar communities that have, similar commercial industrial base, similar residential base, similar population, we are far below what they have for staffing and budget. Even before the cuts, we were below most of those communities. But now that we've been cut, we are egregiously below them. And I think that an attorney would have a field day with any of those aspects. But besides that, besides the legal aspect, right now, just to give you a synopsis of how things are operating, we have essentially 4 full-time firefighters. We have a 5th one, he's injured, and that's going to happen. People will get hurt, or they'll get sick, or they'll be on vacation. And each one of those 4 is staffing the station 24/7. So they're doing 24-hour shifts, and then they're being relieved by the next person. And they're responding to call after call alone. And to the uninitiated, or, to the public, that may not seem like a big deal. But here's the problem. I'll give you a couple examples of recent calls. 2 weeks ago, around 3 a.m., we got called to dispatched as 2-car motor vehicle accident. When our full-time firefighter got there at 3 a.m., thereabouts, it was a tractor trailer truck loaded with home heating oil, head on into a small passenger vehicle. And believe it or not, both vehicles sustained heavy damage, even the tractor trailer. the front wheel was driven right into the truck. So you would think, nobody's going to survive that. But miraculously, the driver did in the car. He was shaken up, but he actually walked away from it. So we got lucky there. There was no heating oil leak. There was no diesel fuel leak from the truck. It was a close call and averted. But with one firefighter responding to that, there's really not much that he or she can do. And then you've got the chief coming in behind him, and his role is to be in command. It's not to be as a firefighter, and he can't do that role. So he's not operating as an incident commander. He's drawn into the firefighting operations. And so we don't have an incident commander until more people show up, generally from the call force or from mutual aid. And that's a big problem. We had another call recently, last week, on middle of the day on Route 9. Small car pulled out in front of an F-350. The truck was pulling a trailer full of snowplows, I believe. So he had some weight behind him. He was driving down, it was by Esalen Cafe, right on that bad area there. And this poor person pulled right out in front of him, got T-boned. And we had one full-time firefighter respond. Had to start cutting this person out of the vehicle by himself. The chief got there, and luckily one of our call force members was available to go as well. But it was basically the chief and the full-time firefighter extricating this person. So they're doing the job that, 6 or 8 people would normally do. And they were able to get it done, which is a miracle. But this is what's happening on a day-to-day basis in Hadley. The stories don't just end there. The fire we had at the massage studio, we had 7 Hadley firefighters there, say in the first half hour, 45 minutes, one of them being the chief. He's running around hooking up to hydrants, pulling hoses, but again, not in a command posture. And there's a lot of things that he has to do. So he's trying to be a firefighter. He's trying to help, be in command, and things are going to slip through the cracks. We were not in what I would say a safe operating posture on that fire for at least half an hour when more mutual aid showed up. So when that fire was put out, the building had what I would say like light commercial construction. There was wood trusses supporting the roof. There was a little bit of a snow load on the roof, but not much. But those wood trusses were burned. They were charred heavily, surprisingly charred. So, if that ceiling or that structure had collapsed on us while we were in there in that first half hour, we just simply didn't have the resources on hand to deal with that. And 7 Hadley firefighters responding to a working structure fire like that is just not acceptable. And it's not any fault of ours. That's just what we have. We don't have another card to play. So when things go wrong, that's it. That's all we got. We're not going in our back pocket and pulling out an ace, because there's no ace there. And anybody in emergency management knows that you build in redundancy and that gives you reliability. And we just don't have any type of redundancy at this point. In fact, I've been with Hadley Fire for 10 or 12 years. When I first started, we had the chief and we had one full-time firefighter during the day. And that was dicey. It wasn't a great setup. We just have too many calls during the day. And the call force supplemented it. But back then, I would say we had twice as many active call force members as we do now. So effectively, we're in a situation right now where we're worse off than we were before we started to transition to a full-time department. And we're doing more calls too. So to give you an idea of what other towns of our makeup are doing. So Hadley, what I did is I found other communities with Hadley's population, and then I looked at their assessed values. If you take Hadley based on our population, and then you look at how much of our tax base is made up of commercial, industrial, and residential, we compare very favorably, very closely to Avon, Mass, and Lee, Mass. So Hadley having 5,200 people, you take the next 12 higher population towns and the next 12 lower population towns, right? So we're effectively the mean. And then you look at those towns and you see who has a commercial base like we have. The next two closest towns are Avon and Lee. And we are at 27%, Avon's 32%, and Lee is 20%. So Lee is significantly less really than us. But the reason I'm interested in that commercial base is because it's a more complicated type of protection district, right? You've got a Walmart, you've got a Home Depot. We have all types of hotels and also properties that, you know, house the homeless. We serve a very diverse type of population here. And Avon, with their 32% commercial base, they have 18 full-time firefighters, 6 call firefighters, but the chief said he's looking to add 6 more. Their budget is 2.6 million, and they do 1,500 runs a year. They also operate 2 ambulances. Hadley, we have presently 5 full-time firefighters plus the chief. We have about 7 or 8 active call firefighters. Our budget was $926,000, and we did almost 2,200 runs last year. Town of Lee, they're 20% commercial, 80% residential, 12 full-time firefighters, 14 call firefighters, budget of 1.3 million, 15, almost 1,600 runs last year. But the chief told me that they're in the process of building a brand new $37 million fire station, and that he's going to request another $300,000 next year, next fiscal year for his department. And by the way, the chief in Lee was very familiar with what's happening here in Hadley, because pretty much everybody is in this part of the state. There's widespread concern, and you can see we were lucky enough and grateful that we've got people here from Belchertown, Northampton, and there might be some Amherst people here. You know, I made one phone call to somebody I know in Belchertown, and this is what showed up. So the level of concern is significant, and the town is really on thin ice right now. And I believe very firmly that an override for the fire department has to happen. There's just no other solution. And right now, the momentum in the department is going in the total wrong direction, and it needs to get reversed. Because quite frankly, if I was a full-time member in Hadley, I would be looking for other employment opportunities. And if we continue to lose people, it takes months to backfill that. So what are we going to do if we go from 5 full-time to 2 or 3? We're just going to have holes that we can't fill. And the call force isn't going to grow in that time frame to serve it, because it takes, if you've got somebody who's very new to firefighting and hasn't been trained, it's at least a year to really get them up to speed. So we're stuck, and the department needs immediate relief from this. Give me a second, because I'm make sure I didn't miss my key points. You know, I think that's really the bulk of it. There's other voices here that will probably speak out, but an override is necessary. There's just no other way around it. One thing I also wanted to mention as a business owner, and I don't know if this is possible for the town, but we use the Commonwealth Healthcare Provider, the connector, and the rates on that have not actually gone up too terribly in the last couple of years. So I don't know if the town can use that, but it might be worth investigating. Now, that's an aside, but the main thing that I wanted to express is just something absolutely, without a doubt, needs to be done. And I also want to make a further point. As a call firefighter, I represent about $75,000 a year of savings to the town. And all of you on the boards, you represent savings to the town. If you guys weren't doing this, we'd have to be hiring professionals to do your jobs. And I completely respect that. But I don't have a horse in this race. I'm not telling you to hire more full-time firefighters because I want to become a full-time firefighter. I'm too old for that right now. That's, and a lot of the other guys here are in the same boat. What we're telling you is, if anybody can send you this message, in ways that can be understood and hopefully taken seriously, it's the people on the call force, because we have been here the whole time. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to do that to you, but this situation needs to be resolved. And the reason I say I'm $75,000 is because if you didn't have a call force, what you would have is a fire department with 4 full-time people on each tour. So you'd be looking at about 16 firefighters plus some extras, so you're not getting killed on overtime. You'd have a chief, you'd have an assistant chief, you'd probably have an inspections person. This is all things that a normal functioning fire department of a town basically this size would require without some type of call force. So, you know, if the town can't hear me say it or Rob say it or any of the other guys say it and believe us, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, that's the bottom line. The money needs to be spent. It needs to be appropriated through an override, and it needs to be spent. And we need to get back to where we were before, because even at 2 full-time firefighters 24/7, we were still bare bones. So, you know, without some type of immediate action, the town's in a lot of trouble. And that's what I have to tell you today. So,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. So, John, I don't think anybody up at this table would disagree with anything you had to say. We all understand completely. The biggest takeaway I heard you say is we need an override.
Correct.
We agree with that as well. So you'd made one phone call, you got this many people to come,
Mhm.
make a bunch of phone calls and talk to people about and passing an override, and things can move. I think we would have good luck moving things forward. But we're gonna
Yeah.
have to discuss the override, what the dollar amount is going to be, and then hopefully we can get it to pass. But
I
we're gonna
think
need
though,
help.
I agree with you there. I think that my message though is we need a fire department override. We can't keep going like this. And I know the town faces a very serious financial situation, and other departments are faced with cuts the next time around if nothing passes, but we can't, the town needs to fund the fire department. We can't play games. It has to be a fire department only override. That has to be a menu item. And I just don't see any other way around it. And I'll also mention that I know, and I'm in this boat, there's plenty of people in town that feel like public safety has been attached to certain items. And there was a town meeting 2 years ago, probably, when the DPW was looking for a large amount of money to build a DPW building. And the town hired a consultant for 250 grand to evaluate that proposal. But rather than have the vote on that 250 grand as a standalone item, it got bundled with some other items. And there's a lot of people in town, myself included, who look at that and say, if the 250 grand can't stand on its own merits, it shouldn't be included. And in the end, what did the consultant tell us? It was an overpriced structure that they wanted to build. And frankly, I think a lot of people were feeling that and they weren't surprised by that outcome. So that's one example of where, you know, sometimes it feels like public safety is being used to carry everything forward. And it's not working. And the town needs to fund the fire department through an override directly tied to the fire department, exclusively to the fire department, because it's too important. You can't keep kicking this can down the road. There's nowhere to go. Like I said, we have no other cards to play. We had a car fire 3 weeks ago, middle of the day on Mill Valley Road. There was no hydrants there. It's that part of Mill Valley that has no hydrants. It was in the middle of nowhere. And our engine got there and wouldn't go into pump. Well, we didn't have anyone back at the station until a call force member luckily got there and brought another engine. This is what our bench is so short that even a car fire in the middle of the fields can sometimes present us a problem. So, you know, there's just nowhere to go from here. We're at rock bottom, hopefully, and we need to build back up. So when I say override, I'm talking strictly about the fire department.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So John, that was one of the biggest feedbacks I got from the last town meeting is, you know, we used to do standalone items for capital.
Yeah,
Everybody complained that the process took too long. They wanted to hurry up town meeting. They wanted to group them and whatever else. But that sentiment has changed and now everybody says, you know, we're grouping them to try to force them to do that,
Yeah.
which is not the case. But so in my opinion, yes, we need to divide out all these capital items and let them stand on their own and people can pick from a menu, yes or no. But yeah, I think that's a change that should be made for future town meetings, whether
Yeah.
it's just for the fire department or for any of these items. So that way people don't feel like, hey, I have to vote for this in order to pay for school security, which is one of the things that came up this last time. So.
right. Puts people in a very awkward position and
Right.
times are tight and it's, you know, it's got to be à la carte, I guess. So any other questions?
If not right now, we got
Okay.
somebody standing behind you
Yeah.
that wants to talk. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ronnie Williams from 7 East Commons Drive. Can somebody tell me what percent of the override we voted on was for health benefits approximately?
$1.
It was,
About half.
no, it was at least a third.
I thought it was 800, 1.7.
Yeah, we were asking 2.5, so it was a third. Right?
A third?
About a third, yes.
So, you know, looking online, I see all these people saying Hadley used to be a good place to live. It was affordable and now it's like Northampton and Amherst and somehow blaming it on new people in town or everything else. Well, everything else in life has changed. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here at least, but you know, we didn't used to have email and Zoom and so many things in our lives have changed over the past maybe 30 years. And some of them are more expensive. And Hadley's not going to be the way it was with all the changes. And it's not only Hadley. If you read the Gazette, you see all these small towns that have been having to vote on overrides. So I just feel like people are sort of stuck in this nostalgia of wanting it to be like it used to be. Well, I'd like some things in my life to be like they used to be, and it's just not going to be that way. You know, groceries cost more, the cost of living is more. It's just how it is. I would urge people to volunteer, the people who can, who don't work full time or don't have young kids at home and help out the town that way. I know people at the senior center do, but it just bothers me when people say it should stay the same as it was. That's all.
Thank you.
Hello. Evan Jacobs, 12 Cold Spring Lane. I had one question, then I had kind of a topic. If I can make this. Okay. I had one question. So I know that we have an agreement with UMass through 2027, like a collaboration agreement. And part of that is, I guess we're receiving 85,000 annually from them. Is that represented in the revenue chart?
Yeah, it's part of the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. Right?
That's different, actually.
Oh, that's different. It's
Yep.
different one.
It's
Sorry.
like a community agreement that we have with them.
Oh,
It's in that local receipts.
Okay.
Green.
Part of the green.
Got it. Thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to say is I think, well, I support a split tax rate, so I think we should definitely pursue that. The other piece that I wanted to say is that I think, you know, a large reason why the previous override failed is just that, you know, for a large amount of people in the town that are on fixed income, they just simply can't afford it. So I think that we need to consider means testing as a option for allowing people who literally cannot afford it to have an avenue. And, you know, potentially we could supplement that with some sort of volunteer program so that, you know, people can still be involved in some way, but I think that is ultimately the reason why it failed, is just there's a lot of people that simply can't afford it.
Thank you. Certainly.
So for the community agreement with UMass, we've come a long way from where we used to be with that. I mean, we got, I think of some of those electronic speed monitoring carts one year, and that was about it. So we've been doing better, but if you look at South Hadley, Amherst, every college town has this problem with their universities that are in their town. They don't have to do any of this stuff. They've been being pushed to contribute more, but the contribution amounts are just minuscule compared to their overall budget. So I don't know if there's a way that we could push to have an increased contribution, but I mean, that could make a huge difference in town if some of these, I mean, they're tax free. Their properties in town are tax free. They're not paying taxes on this. You know, you look at over in the business park there, what's the Venture Way? Yeah, you look at some of those buildings over there that UMass has bought, or the Chinese Merchant School, places like that, that they don't pay taxes on those properties. They're big buildings that came off the tax rolls. So it's a hit to our revenue streams. So it'd be nice if they could chip in a little bit more.
Yeah, and if you want to help in that regard, so now we are talking about the payment in lieu of taxes program. Joe Comerford's office in particular is fighting this issue really, really hard because it affects so many of her constituents. And so, you know, they love hearing from the residents. So if anybody wants to reach out to Joe Comerford's office and just email and express support for it, but I know she is definitely fighting the good fight to see if that kind of reimbursement rate, if you will, or the formula that they're using for this can be changed, because like many things in the Commonwealth, it's the eastern part of the state that is getting the most benefit from the payment in lieu of taxes, and the western part of the state is woefully inadequate. So,
Amy.
So one thing that I guess Amy Parsons, select board, but I'm actually talking as a citizen right now. One thing I'd like the select board to look into. I know that we own a lot of land, and I know that a lot of it is also an APR, but I think we should probably take a look at our owned inventory and see if there's any parcels that would be advantageous for us to maybe sell.
Okay.
Offload, I suppose.
Yeah.
Hi, Daniel Casal, Fort Island Circle, also called Forest Firefighter. Sell to who? Who do you want to sell the land to?
I mean, you could put it up, right?
I mean, to like commercial. I'm just wondering because this came up before I was going to ask about this at some point. This is a fine lead in. This has come up at multiple town meetings now, I think, about a split tax right in the town. But if we sell more commercial real estate, they're, you know, places like Walmart's going to laugh all the way to the bank, right? They'll just move in and say, sweet, Hadley's not taxing us anymore. We're definitely going to buy that. And then that still doesn't really help us, right? So I guess my question to you guys is, that came up tonight also. Is that, I mean, that seems like a really great way to generate revenue that hasn't happened yet. And it's kind of surprising. It also kind of directly affects the fire department, right? That'd be a great way to fund the fire department with split tax revenue for the things that are bringing all of the traffic through town. So has that been considered?
So to answer the first part of your question, I don't think the town owns any commercially zoned property that we could sell to
Yeah,
anybody.
we don't.
And Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we sell anything, I believe it has to go through the procurement process.
State, so really you have to set bids.
So it would be if we did it, it would be basically like an auction, highest bidder gets it.
And I know we have a lot of APR land, so I don't,
But yeah,
that might not be.
Or swampland.
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, the town doesn't own APR land, but we do own a bunch of parcels, but I'm sure they're not worth very much, quite
Mhm.
frankly.
Sure.
Jay.
Back to the comment about people who cannot afford the taxes because of limited income. If they are paying taxes, that means they're a homeowner. And the town does have a process that only, my understanding, one person in the history of the town has ever done. And that is you can have your taxes put as a lien on your property with interest to the town ultimately, so that when the property sells, then the town gets the money. Doesn't help us in the immediate future, but it is something that people who do not have cash flow can consider.
Just the split tax question also. Has that been considered by the town and what's the process for that? Like, is that moving forward? Like, that seems like a really great way to do this. So is that your magic bullet? Can we do that?
So, let me just ask you how you envision the split tax rate working, because most people do not understand that. So I'll explain, and then the town has a tax levy, it's here. That's X amount of dollars each year that we can gain revenue from through taxation. And lots of people think that if we do a split tax rate, we can get more money because we're charging the businesses more. But no matter what we do, it's right here. We will not get any more money by doing that. The burden would go more onto the businesses, less onto the residents. But at the end of the day, there's no more money that we can get from that.
Sure. So that sounds great for the residents. I think anyone listening in says, cool, do that. Right. So if the residents didn't feel pressured, right, when we asked for these increases in taxes, if they were paying less taxes, people might be more inclined to vote to raise the taxes.
And we do talk about a split tax rate every year. The select board has to set the tax rate with the help of the assessors. And usually we get told that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do it just because of all the legal stuff that we have to go through. And then the fact that the businesses will ask for abatements because they think they're getting overcharged, and it just becomes a whole mess. But we'll certainly look into it again.
Sure, thanks. And I mean, I think I cut some people, but while I'm up here, I just wanted to thank John for coming up and saying the stuff he said, and I would repeat all of that if we had the time. But I also want to point out that the call force members that the town is relying on right now live full lives with their full-time jobs and their whole families. Myself, I just had a baby 7 months ago, so I am full-time stay-at-home dad right now. That means my call force availability is at night. So I'm taking care of my kid all day, and then at night, I'm trying to support the one firefighter we have on duty. I know another one of our call force members is exactly the same situation. So those 7 or 8 members that you might be seeing on a call, down to 6 during the day, maybe 5 if they're away at work, maybe 4 if one of them's out of town. Suddenly, if your house is on fire, you have one person effectively watching it burn down. So I think we should all just keep that in mind as we move forward.
We most certainly do.
I also wanted to make another comment in regards to the split tax rate. Some people don't know this, but when you split the tax rate, it's not just residents and businesses, it's also residents, businesses, and all of the farmers and all of their assessed land as well. So there are a lot of farmers in town. I know that a lot of them do have chapter land, but some of them don't. So that's another consideration that we have when we are talking about a single rate versus a split rate.
Shardul, I know you've been sitting there a while, and I see you come up, so.
We want to finish the fire department.
Well, you were there first, so it's up to you.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Davis, president of the City of Northampton Firefighters Local. Obviously, the most important part of our job is safety, and their staffing is eliminating their biggest safety factor, themselves. I saw your slides earlier. My personal opinion, I think it's pretty sad that the majority of that slide where the cuts were public safety dispatchers. We rely on them every day, all day, to get us there safely, get us the correct information. Not only does it affect them, it affects every community around here. They did 2,200 calls last year, cutting their staffing in half. That falls on Northampton. That falls on East Hampton. Amherst, Belchertown. I don't live in Hadley, but I feel like there needs to be a lot deeper dive into where cuts can be made instead of key components to the safety of this town. DPW, people got to get to work every morning. That's one less plow truck on the road. That's one less sander out in an ice storm. Dispatcher. I think the community should really reconsider this. And the comment that you made to the brother from Hadley, that he made one phone call and all these people showed up. You guys are the leaders of this community. I would hope you guys are doing the same. Thank you. Have a good night.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Gerard. I'm the president from the local of the Belchtown Firefighters. A few points I want to hit on real fast. Number one, everybody understands how tight finances are. All right, they are very tight, especially this day and age. However, you really the town needs to understand, everybody needs to understand what you're losing when you lose the fire department. The brother from Northampton, he just spoke about DPW dispatch and what have you, and how important they are, and they truly are. But when you start cutting the fire department, you're putting the lives of, the town is taking it into its hands, putting the lives of all of its residents on the line. All right, we heard numerous examples just recently about car fires, car accidents, building fires. The residents who are affected by that directly, that's putting all their lives on the line. It's putting the firefighters' lives on the line, susceptible to injury and what have you. My town, we went through recently within the last year, a 2.5 override as well. It is very stressful. I understand that. My local understands that. My town understands that. However, you need to understand, the town needs to understand as well, is that when you make these cuts, when you start losing public safety, you're putting the security of the town at risk, and not just your life. It's the life of the elderly population, the disabled population, the children. There's quite a few lives that are being affected by this, and some of those people don't actually get a say in it. Fire public safety has evolved over the years, right? You can't turn on the news within 6 months and not see something about a mass shooting. All right. We all know that. That's the unfortunate reality of the world we live in nowadays. Fire departments are training up with police departments on how to respond to those types of incidents. All right. I know my community does. I'm sure your community does as well. But when you don't have the personnel, the people there, it just creates an entire situation, entire environment to where you're not going to feel ready. Nobody's ever ready for something like that, but you're not ready. You're truly not ready to deal with something like that if it does happen. This town holds quite a bit of commercial and diverse residential. Me personally, when I drive through this town, I love this town. I do not live here, but when I do go through this town, I always comment on how beautiful this town actually is. It's a very nice town. However, you do have a very diverse population. Route 9 with all the commercial that's out there. Okay. You have the farmlands, you have the community, the smaller neighborhoods and what have you. It's very nice. That deserves to be protected. And all of those come with their own special hazards. Fighting a building fire, a residential house fire is not the same as dealing with a commercial fire, such as the mall. Years ago, my department, including myself, responded to that strip plaza fire over there on Route 9. I forget how many different departments were there, but there was quite a few. And we were there throughout the entire night. All right. The weather conditions, it was freezing out, everything else. However, everybody was able to come out. That sort of participation from Hadley Fire themselves, I believe they had just about their entire department out there as well. It was huge. All right. That incident was able to be isolated and what have you. Businesses around it, other buildings around it were saved. If I'm a business owner and there's a building next to my building that's on fire, I want something to be done to try to protect my building. That's my income. And also, just finally, the lack of fire protection, lack of public safety is going to ultimately cost people their lives. That's just a frank reality of it. I've been in this business for over 20 years. I can tell you that there are times that I have seen and I have responded to calls in other communities where they're waiting on the ambulance to show up, because I'm also a paramedic. You show up, the person that started out having a heart attack has now deceased. And you try to revive them, and unfortunately, due to time, it's just not able to the time that's passed. So I implore everyone, especially in this town, to think about the public safety aspect of it when you vote on, well, first of all, putting forward a 2.5 for public safety, and then voting in favor of that, because it is truly important. And you owe it all to yourselves to have that type of protection. You put in what you get out of it, what you put in for money wise, right? You get what you pay for. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Spafford, on-duty firefighter right now. I do not live in town. I don't do overtime normally. I'm doing 24 to 48 hours of overtime a week because of the cuts. Okay. I don't want to be here as much as I am. I want to be with my family. All right. But I'm not. I'm doing it because I do care about this community, both on the EMS side and the fire side. So thank you.
Thank you for your efforts.
Bardul Parmar, 70 Chimera Road. I want to first for the fire department, and I've been a big supporter of Mike in the many years, and I've seen him exhausted. I've seen everything, and he's helped our family, and much appreciation to him and the entire fire department. It's one of the things that I think makes Hadley a great place to live is the people like Mike who really have a sincere care about the people who live here. It's not a job for them, it's really their life. And thank you again for everything that you guys do. One thing I will say, as a business owner, as a resident, everything that the previous two people said is exactly right. Any given weekend, if we have 3 hotels, those hotels are full. I have probably 1,000 people I'm responsible for. And if something happens in one of those hotels and the fire department is not adequately staffed or equipped to get there on time, that's gonna affect me as a business owner, because and as a resident, that we didn't do our fiduciary responsibility as residents to take care of the people that do visit this town and spend their money and contribute to our town in terms of taxes and other things. So I do agree that something, whether it's a fire department override, needs to happen. I don't think it's a question. Maybe we can go and talk about an amount, but we're adults. We're all adults here. We have to act like adults and understand we hold a greater responsibility than ourselves and our financial viability. This is people's lives. This is people's assets. We're talking about a town that has over $1 billion of assets. $1 billion is just residential assets. Go look at the assessed value on the annual report. It's almost $1 billion for residential. That's not even including the assessed value for commercial. And we're going to go and play around with one firefighter. If you're running a company and that was your backstop for security, you'd be out of business in no time. With that said, I know there's been a lot of talk about split tax rate. Again, as a resident and as a business owner who's been here for almost 40 years, who's built a family business from really nothing, I do want to clear something up. Commercial generates over $6.8 million of revenue for the town. $6.8 million. And people talk about public safety, about fire department, police department, and how there's a lot of demand caused by commercial. The budget for public safety with benefits is less than 5.5 million. So when you go and look at what commercial generates, it's in excess of the budget for public safety. And we pay the highest water and sewer rates even though we're not the highest users. It's residential and farming combined use significantly more water and sewer than we do, but commercial pays the highest amounts. The fact is that it has to be an equitable situation. Commercial is subsidizing the residents of this town, not the other way around. People need to understand. And it's not the Walmart. I'm not Walmart. I'm not a Walton. I'm a Parmar. I grew up in this town. I've cleaned rooms. I've cleaned people's toilets, made beds, mowed lawns, did everything possible to help my family build the business that we did. And that's not just like when I was 15 years old. During the pandemic, when we had no staff, guess who was plowing at night? Guess who was doing the rooms when we didn't have any staff? That was me. That was generating taxes for this town. So understand that it's not all about Walmart and Target and Home Depot. The guys that work at Primos, those two brothers kill themselves every day. You're going to affect them. You're going to affect Essalon. You're going to affect Alina's. You're going to affect Auto Express. All the dentists that are independent dentists that have come here, built these buildings, and created taxable assets for this town. You're looking at Hadley Meadows. All of those businesses in there are small businesses. Tandem Bagel. That's not Panera Bread. That's a family out of Western Massachusetts. You look at Four Seasons Liquors. He's a Hadley resident. He's generating taxes for this town. All the Popeyes, what do you call, Jersey Mike's, Five Guys, those are all franchisees. Those aren't corporately run places. They're small businesses that have a 413 area code. You know, attorneys' offices, the pet hotels, the bike shop, again, Hadley residents, and they're small businesses. With a split tax rate, you think you're going to go and stick it to Walmart. You're going to stick it to me. You're going to stick it to residents in this town, and the small businesses that also keep this town afloat. So understand that it's not just Target and Walmart and Home Depot. It's real people, small businesses that keep this place what it is. My family is the single highest generator of taxes in this town, between occupancy taxes, personal property taxes, residential real estate taxes. That's a Hadley resident. That's not Walmart. That's not Target. That's nobody else. That's one of your own. So when you think about this tax rate, you better make sure you know who's actually going to be paying the bills, because it's not who you think it is. Thank you.
My name is Lynn Latham. I live on Highland Circle. I had the opportunity to talk with, now that the dreaded O word, override, has been mentioned, I talked with one of the select board members in South Hadley this weekend, and they have been considering $3, $6, and $9 million potential override options. In order to evaluate those options, they invited anyone in town who wanted to be part of a committee to look at them to do so. 12 residents signed up. These individuals represented different socioeconomic backgrounds. They were long-term residents and newer residents. It was a diverse group. In the end, that group recommended to the select board an override of $11 million, because they were all convinced, except for one who did not vote in favor of the recommendation, that the issues were challenging enough, not entirely of the town's making, and that the funds were necessary, and they didn't want to do this every year. I don't know if there is time for Hadley to do something similar, but I wanted to at least put that idea out there and also to relay their experience. And I am wondering if back to the, I believe it was the second slide that listed the positions that have either been eliminated or not refilled, if someone would at least briefly describe what the impact has been on a continuing staff members as well as on the public services.
Just microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I can do the best I can. I don't want to speak for any department heads. I think there are some who might be on the call. I think everyone's probably pretty squared away on the effects of the fire department situation, the bottom one. The building maintenance position, we have 2 building maintenance people in town. So envision 2 people who, when somebody puts a doorknob through a wall accidentally, will come and fix the hole in the wall. When there's leaking ceiling tiles, something breaks, things like that. Those people will come and they'll fix those minor maintenance issues. We had 2, we now have 1. That was a vacant position. So just really quickly, for those of you who are unaware, these positions were selected because they were vacant at the time and because these cuts needed to be made in the middle of a budget cycle. So that's why we selected these positions. The highway worker is basically a laborer that the position previously held was a CDL driver and could plow the roads. I can tell you just recently I had a conversation with the DPW director as well as several of the DPW union members who are feeling the effects of the loss of that position, especially when you have 24-hour straight snowstorms. There's basically less people that can help with that issue. The inspections coordinator was an individual who worked in the inspections office as basically a intel person that would accept all of the building permits, electric permits, plumbing permits, things like that, and place them into the computer system. What's it called, Mike? So it's a permit link to ensure that all of the proper people who needed to sign off on certain things were getting their sign offs. That position was eliminated, so we are left with a full-time building commissioner in that office and a part-time local inspector in that office.
Mike, just to insert on that, another impact from that is when the inspections aren't moving efficiently through the system, it also means that the revenue associated with that is not being collected.
Right. So for those of you who saw the brief draft budget that we went through last week, you'll see it again this upcoming Wednesday. The revenues for the inspections department are down significantly because they have less personnel to handle those things. That is a direct, that has a direct effect on revenues versus expenses in your entire budget. The dispatcher, obviously, that's self-explanatory. It was a vacancy. We lost that position. We are now in a situation as the firefighter mentioned earlier, that essentially the other people on the shift have to pick up the slack. What the public safety departments have been trying to do for years and what the fire chief was trying to do is basically set up the fire department in the same way that the police department was set up as far as staffing goes. If you have enough staff on duty, when folks take days off, you don't have to worry about overtime climbing out of control. Kent, you had mentioned this during town meeting. We had our dispatchers working in that direction. We were still short and unable to have them at full staffing. That reduction puts us, even further behind the 8 ball. So we are at minimum staffing for at least one of those shifts. And the HR assistant, approximately a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, we hired an HR director. When she started in that office, there were 3 individuals in that office, and over the course of the last year and a half, it has dwindled down to one position. One of those positions was the HR assistant who was handling data entry and things like that. So ultimately, just like with dispatchers, firefighters, and any other workers that were eliminated or jobs that were eliminated, the rest of the folks in the office have to pick up the slack. So I hope that answers your question, Lynn.
Hey. So we've been talking a lot about a year, maybe 2 years. If you look into your crystal ball and things are going the way they are right now, what does 2030 look like for Hadley?
Linda, you want that one?
Just turn it on.
All right. It's gonna get worse before it gets better. And that's what we're looking at going into 27. Because the revenues are, we're hit on a number of things. One was we were hoping to get some relief from the override, and we didn't get that. About a third of what we were looking at for the override was to cover the increase in the health insurance. We still had to pay it, which meant that increase to health insurance had to come out of other positions, which is pretty much what you see in those positions there. Going into 27, our revenues are actually, our local receipts are actually down from the year before, unfortunately. And we're looking at a few things in there, and there are some things that may go up, but right now we can't rely on them enough to put them in the budget. But another issue that we've had over the past few years is that we have been using free cash pretty consistently, $200,000-300,000 of free cash. But when we ran into this issue last year with the health insurance and we were waiting on the override, we did use close to $900,000 in free cash just to keep the budget going until we had answers on the override. So when we look at the revenues for 27, we have to take off that, we have to deduct for that reliance on free cash. So whatever's happening to our revenue situation, say that's down a little bit, then we have to deduct this almost 900,000 that we have less to deal with, less to work with this year than last year. So that's the worst part, that we get worst. After that, when, if I'm on the assumption then if we don't have overrides, because we can't project an override success, even though that's something that, depending how we put it together, we may be able to sell that to the town, and you have come up with some ideas tonight. But on the assumption that doesn't happen, then what we will have done in 26 with those cuts, in 27 with more cuts, if we have reset to a lower level, including dealing without the free cash. And then when the revenues start to go again, we will be rising. Instead of being up here and trying to increase, we'll be down here and increasing. So I think that's when things will start to get better, because our revenues and expenses will be more in line. Having said that, we're looking again for 27, and it wasn't even on that chart, another over $600,000 in increases in benefits. So that chart you saw that went boom, 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 and then a sudden up, take that sudden up again into 27. So that's why it makes it kind of unpredictable. We do have some projections going out. We're working on a 5-year projection right now. Someone's actually has it and is working on it independently, and hopes to have that in the next few weeks. But how do you project expenditures when we get hit so suddenly with increase like that? So that's the best I think that I can say about it at this time, because we're still kind of mired in the, we're still trying to work really struggling our way through this most difficult year that we have. Wasn't 26, but it's probably going to be 27, be more difficult. And then we hope that we can start building from there. Which is why, your ideas about targeting into targeted overrides is actually a very good idea because overall, any part in the system where we can get additional cash injections helps the entire budget. So, okay.
And can I just jump in? I don't see a path forward without additional growth. I just don't. I mean, bottom line is we're gonna have inflation. We can't control it. It's real. I mean, we all know what things cost when we were kids and we know what they cost now. This is a situation we just have to grow ourselves out of. You know, I mean, I do financial planning for a living. It's no different than anybody's household. You have to assume expenses are going to go up. You have to assume that there are going to be things that hit you that you never thought were coming, whether those are unfunded mandates from the state or whatever it is at the municipal level. But without additional revenue generation that is going to sustain over the long haul, we're just going to keep coming back and having this conversation year over year over year.
Would you characterize this as existential?
Yes. I would.
So it's important information, you know? As a town, we have to kind of rise to the occasion and look at where the world is today and make decisions based on that. Unfortunately, the world from 10 years ago is long gone. So maybe we do need a bigger override and we need to get it passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul? That's not gonna take the next 4 hours, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No,
Well,
I just, maybe two. No, I'm Paul Benjamin, 35 Newton Lane. I also own Hadley Crossing, which is a commercial property. I started investing in this town. I moved here. And I am one of those commercial companies that will get hit if you split the rate. What I did is I went and got the tax roll, and this is Russell Street. And if you go through this, you're not going to see a lot of companies. What Shardul said is absolutely accurate. You're talking about fighting between us taxing more local residents, more money, because other residents don't want to pay. That's the problem. And Lowe's, I worked as a consultant on the Lowe's project. That used to be a farm, true enough. It's now generating, I think it's $124,000 in revenue. Just on property tax. Okay. The Walmart Mall, I think is at $435,000, somewhere around there. That's all in here. You can look up what my building pays. Commercial properties don't pay the amounts that our homeowners do. There's no comparison. So people think, oh, well, we'll just throw that money on these commercial properties. They're already paying a lot more because their properties are valued more, because they produce income, they get based on the income. That's why when you have an empty mall, they can get a rebate or an abatement rather to bring down the rate because they're not generating the kind of money that justifies the tax. Okay, if you split the rate, everybody in that property in the commercial is going to be coming in saying it's too much, we need an abatement. The town will be flooded with legal. And the point is that we shouldn't be trying to pit one group of people in this town against another. We're all residents here. And I agree, we need an override. I supported the other override as strong as I could. But, you know, the fire department, our police department need to be supported here. But we have other departments that are equally at risk. We're down to departments of 1 or 2 people. I think there's 5 or 6 people now in the DPW.
I don't know what the number is.
I mean, you know, you tell that the plowing went way downhill at the last 2 storms. And these were tough storms too. So you would see some degradation anyway, but you can see these people were stretched. Okay. And I think we have to, you know, the person who said, well, let's get the community together to talk about what we need. I think if the people who oppose this thing got together and sat down and really looked at what the costs are running this town, they would probably come around and say, we need to lift the income. We haven't done an override for operation in anybody's memory, right? Before I lived here. And the 2.5 has hamstrung this town. And inflation and our costs of benefits and so on have the inflation of those things is killing us in terms of our budget, and we need to get an override, and it should, and I want to see the department get it, but our other departments deserve the same. Okay, and I just don't want to see us pitting department against department. Our schools need it. And the thing is that everything is connected. When you change one thing, something else gets out of kilter. You know, what's the law about, you know, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's what's going to happen. If we cut the school department, then less people may decide to pick coming to school here from out of town. So our revenue will go down. So we're going to have a deficit. That doesn't make any sense. We didn't raise the price of water in this town for, I don't know how many years.
Too many.
Okay, and we needed to borrow money for a tank to replace our water system. And what did we find out? We don't qualify. We haven't raised our rates high enough as other communities have. So we lost a $3 million grant because we were stingy and cheap about not increasing the fees to cover the cost. And here's the other thing they didn't do. Because of that, we have a very narrow amount of money in our reserves, in our water and our sewer. I think sewer's almost out. I don't think they have anything left. If they do, it's minimal.
It's better now.
Is it better? Okay, it's climbing again because the rate went up. But we should have several million in there. We should.
Had the rates been raised, you know.
Years ago,
incrementally.
we'd have a couple $1 million in there. And then because of that, you wouldn't be coming in for an override when you have a major event. That's the thing. We should be more forward looking. Okay, so I'm hoping that people who voted against this last time can really go to their heart and look at what's happening in this town and reconsider the way they voted. And the people who didn't show up to vote, which was probably half of the registered voters, need to get engaged here. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Chris Norris. I'm the fire chief in the city of East Hampton, and I currently serve as the president of the Western Mass Fire Chiefs Association, and also the first vice president of the State Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts. I don't envy the position all of you are in. It's a tough position, and the community always determines their level of service, and then that's reflected in their budget, and they set their priorities. And it's challenging because there's only a limited amount of revenue coming in. I think to speak to some of the points tonight, in terms of fire and EMS specifically, obviously, there's a misperception out there that by cutting the fire department, that eliminated the ability for them to provide EMS transport service. That's now off the table, is my understanding. And it's being provided by a private contractor. The challenge is if that contract you have with that private provider can't meet the demand of your community, then the misperception is that we're just going to call mutual aid. And to a point, that's true. But understand, mutual aid is designed to be mutual. And by cutting your fire and EMS, you've lost that ability. And I can share with all of you what's happened and what's becoming more of a trend across the state is people are canceling those mutual aid agreements because they're truly not mutual. They restructure them. And then those neighboring communities are now charging you to come over and cover those calls that you don't have the capacity to do. So the misperception out there about mutual aid, and if we can't cover with our own staff, we'll call the neighboring community. That's not going to happen. It's not. Under CMR 170 for the Code of Massachusetts regulations, when you call mutual aid, they don't have to come. They do not have to come. They have no obligation. So that's just one thing to please understand. And again, it's happening here right in Western Mass and more across the state that they're charging fees now for those neighboring calls. The second point is I saw the cuts up there tonight for the first time. And again, it's my understanding that with those recent cuts to the fire department, that eliminated the potential now to continue the fire-based EMS service, the transport service. And what that effectively does, when you have a private provider, you've lost that leverage to negotiate in the future with them. And what I mean by that is you've basically taken the ability to negotiate with them a new contract that you can't put any resources up against. They know coming in, there's no opportunity for your community to do any transport service. They know Amherst probably isn't going to do it now. Northampton's not going to do it. And there's limited other private providers out here that will put in for any RFP. So their proposals are going to increase because they know Hadley now lost the ability to provide that transport service. So that's another component just to think about, that they're only going to come in here. They're going to get a contract. They're going to probably have it pretty significantly low initially. And then when they realize that they've secured the contract, they can increase the cost over time with no competition whatsoever, theoretically. And I think one of the final points just to consider is in terms of the operations here. I've heard a lot about some of the recent calls that your department's been on. And it's challenging for them. I've heard a lot about firefighter safety, which is absolutely true. And I think one thing to understand is with their operations and the limited number of personnel that go to the scenes now, until they get the appropriate number of people for meeting federal requirements of OSHA 2 in and 2 out, they should not be going in these buildings. So what I mean by that is if there's a house fire tonight in your community, they're met out on the front lawn and they're told by those occupants, everyone's out of the building. They should not be going in that building. They should be delaying that response, maybe knocking it down from the outside if they can. But until the appropriate amount of resources and people arrive on scene, they should not be going in that property to put out that fire because it's a violation of federal regulation. So those are just a couple of things to think about in terms of the most recent cuts is the potential to start getting charged from neighboring communities. You've lost your leverage now, negotiating any future contracts with private providers, and your operations have significantly decreased, whether it's because of a violation of federal regulations of OSHA 2 and 2 out, or just a delay in responses. So again, I don't envy your positions. I just wanted to at least give you a few things to think about and some of the indirect costs that potentially may be coming based on those most recent cuts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chief Ingram from the Belchtown Fire Department. And I'm not going to say everything else that was said. I agree with everything that everybody has said. The only thing I can offer you is first, I want to applaud Chief Spankenable and his department that he has for their dedication and the risk that they're taking right now. It concerns me because, as Chief Norris said, if Amherst is coming over here, I can tell you tonight already, we're in the town of Ware, we're in Bondsville. All of us are in the same thing, but you're affecting my community with the ambulance service because now we have to cover Amherst because they're over here. So it's concerning on my side. I was fortunate, my community was fortunate that we did pass an override so we could keep our 6 firefighters that we were going to lay off or not have. But some other options I'm sure that you've already looked at, but continue to look at, is we regionalized our dispatch center. It was a very tough choice. It was not a popular choice, but that's one that we had to do to save money. It still cost you some, but it's just another way to do that. 2 other departments in town, see what you can regionalize with other communities and outsource. There was lots of permitting things in town that I raised and that your other, communities, departments can raise. But again, without your staff, you're, as you can already have, you're not collecting those fees. But those are only some small options that I can offer to you. But the override, again, I support that 100%. I can tell you, I worry about Chief Spankenable and his crew. I talk with them on a regular basis for their health. What they're going through is just unbelievable. I would not be able to sleep at night with what they have to deal with. But again, look at every area you can to raise your fees and regionalize as much as you can. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Robert Adair from 359 River Drive. I'm also clearly on the fire department. Actually, I have a question that I'm curious to know about, maybe because I sort of live under a rock, I don't know the answer to, but it would be also a good information download between you folks and the town as a whole. Kind of to piggyback on this gentleman's question is not so much what do we look like in 2030? What the fire department is clearly taking a brunt of I'm going to say the collateral damage from the financial fallout of the lack of funds, which is clear that we've just don't have enough money coming in. So my question is, what is going to get cut next? And this is more of like a taxpayer question and a question based on a general information to the town. Where do we go from here? And it's a total curiosity question. What's the next steps? What's the next departments that are going to get cut? What positions? And I think it'd just be good for the town as a whole to know what we're doing next. And I'm not, blaming or anything, just asking the question.
Okay, anybody want that one?
Would that be with or
Yeah.
without a potential override? Like if we try to go
Without.
back again?
Without, because I think we're looking at a position where what we saw in the last vote, that it doesn't look like we're going to catch one in the next one either. And I think it's just a good idea for the town as a whole to know what's going to be coming down the pike next, because of the fact that we don't have enough money and that we're going to be continually falling shorter and shorter as time moves forward.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question, and we talked about it a little bit at our last meeting. Basically, in general terms, we need to come up with $1.5 million for FY27. And the way either we have to find $1.5 million in the couch cushions, which isn't going to happen, or we have to eliminate operational funding and positions going forward. As you can probably gather, most of our departments are a department of one, maybe a department of two, with the exception of public safety and the DPW and the schools. They're a little bit different. But we have to come up with that money somewhere. We are still in budget talks, and I guess next week we'll be presenting the budget. So people will be able to see details for the first time of how we're going to make up that shortfall. But we can't deficit spend. And so our budget needs to be balanced. With this past override, the reason that the fire department took the majority of the hits of the layoffs and the empty positions is because the budget that was passed in the spring was passed without funding those firefighter positions and the EMS positions. We had, I could say, our best hopes that the town would pass an override, those positions would be funded, and we could just continue on the way we always had and keep the department the same. The townspeople rejected that. So that's why we were in the position of, and I've gotten that question a lot. Why did the fire department take the biggest hit out of all these departments in town? And the reason was because the budget that was passed at town meeting in the spring was passed without funding the fire department positions. So we had no choice. We had no funding for those positions. So that's why those positions were eliminated or not filled. It wasn't a conscious decision to say, all right, we're going to go after the fire department and we're going to, cut from there the most. That wasn't the intention at all. So that's where we are. And I would say by next Wednesday night, you'll have a good look as far as what we're looking at to balance the budget for FY27.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was curious about. I wasn't trying to drum anymore on what we've been. It's just like, what's next? We've already cut, whatever services could be cut. I'm just curious as as a download to the townspeople of
Mhm.
what's gonna be cut next, you know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
what I was. my
And
question.
once we get a better feel for what the budget's gonna look like, then we're gonna have to dive into what you're concerned about. So we can't answer anything specifically right now. And it's just it's gonna play out as it plays out.
Okay, thank you.
And just from a practical standpoint too, one of the things that I'm sure we'll be talking about at the meeting next week is that, some people have said, well, it's a $22 million budget. I mean, come on, how hard is it going to be to find, whatever the gap is that we're looking for? But the reminder is the reality that in that budget, like you have a debt and interest line item, it's not going anywhere. We already borrowed the money. I mean, that's fixed, right? So what we've been looking at is really trying to educate people to break apart the fixed costs that there's nothing we can do about. I mean, if you have to haul sludge, you have to haul sludge and you have to pay for the invoice. So it unfortunately does come down to variable spending, which you hate to consider. Personnel is variable, but that's what we can control. So that's where everybody should expect. It is absolutely going to be people, and that's not fear mongering. It's just the reality of the budget.
Sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Eric Weiss. I'm probably the only person here from Belchertown who's not a firefighter. But I was very much involved with the override effort in Belchertown, and part of the reason I wanted to come here tonight was just to listen. We rephrased it, and we rephrased it in a way that benefited all. It's not an override, it's an investment in your town. You're making an investment in your town because your town needs the invest. You can't run a business without investing. You can't run a school system without investing in it, and you can't run the town without investing in it. So when we did what we did in Belchertown last year, we brought people together from the different walks and said, we've got to talk to each other. And it didn't win by a lot, but it won. And it doesn't solve all of our problems either. But it's an investment. And that was the sign that popped up around town. I coined it in a meeting one night. I'm happy to share it here. Invest in Hadley. That's what you need to do. That's what the residents need you to do. That's where you need to go. Just be discerning about what you're investing in. Show that it's for the fire department, the police department, the school department, whomever you think it should be. But it's a step you can take. So I really came with the intention of just listening, but once I saw that Belchertown was so well represented here, I felt like I should also share a little bit about the work that was done by citizens all over town to get that override passed. And that's the kind of effort you're going to need.
Thank you.
I had one question that came to mind. Do we have a grant writer for the town?
We don't.
Not a focused, dedicated grant writer. Grant writing basically takes place in the respective departments. So if Chief Spanknable is looking for a safer grant, well, not anymore, right? But in the past, when we've had to do that, then it's really been up to the respective department heads. Chief Mason has been writing grants and some of them have been fairly successful. But we would surely benefit from that kind of focused expertise in town.
Is that something we can open up to volunteering potentially?
Absolutely.
We have a lot of people in the town that are very highly educated and could potentially help with that. So worth pursuing.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online, Jennifer?
Yeah, what I learned, you
Okay.
Want me to read the email?
don't, we used to say yes, but you don't.
And could you announce the?
Yeah, I will.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Well, before you do that, we've had a glitch in the Zoom, the online stuff. And I guess there was 20 minutes or so where things were totally lost. But this recording will be rebroadcast and it will be rebroadcast in its entirety. So if anybody missed anything, and I hope that's none of you people here, you can watch it in its entirety.
Just to be clear, never violated the meeting law, it was just the broadcast on YouTube.
Okay.
Zoom, it's fully broadcasted, we're not violating it.
Okay, thank you.
We got a couple of emails during the last meeting that we read, and we did receive an anonymous email that I just would like to read. Dear Town Administrator, after viewing the last listening session, I am submitting this letter to be read at the upcoming session as a concerned citizen who cares deeply about the safety and long-term stability of our community. I am increasingly concerned about the current staffing level of the Hadley Fire Department. At times, staffing is reduced to a single firefighter on duty operating out of a pickup truck. This situation places that firefighter's safety at significant risk and, more importantly, places the safety of our residents and businesses in jeopardy. One person cannot effectively or safely manage the wide range of emergencies in our town experiences. I am also concerned that Hadley may be missing an important opportunity that neighboring communities have already recognized. Several surrounding towns have strengthened their fire departments by operating municipal ambulance services staffed by cross-trained firefighters/paramedics or EMTs. This model allows departments to increase full-time staffing while generating revenue to offset operational costs. Currently, the town of Hadley funds one firefighter position while allowing Action Ambulance to operate rent-free within the town. While I understand ambulances do not, quote, make money, they do, however, generate revenue. In FY24 alone, ambulance billing collections associated with calls in Hadley totaled approximately $738,321. That is revenue that could potentially have been captured by the town and reinvested into staffing, equipment, and financial stability. For comparison, the town of Ware, which operates its own municipal ALS EMS service with cross-trained firefighters, generated $796,744 in revenue in FY23. In that same calendar year, the Ware Fire Department responded to 2,461 emergency calls. Hadley is projected to reach a similar number of responses this year if current trends continue. As with the majority of suggestions, this is a long-term fix and will not help us for July 1st. For that, we need an override. The call volume exists. The revenue potential exists. Other communities have demonstrated that this model can support stronger staffing levels while contributing meaningfully to municipal finances. I respectfully ask town leadership to carefully examine whether continuing the current model best serves Hadley residents or whether operating a town-run ambulance service staffed by cross-trained firefighters would better protect public safety and strengthen the town's financial position. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. Sincerely, a concerned citizen.
I don't know where to start. We did that. We tried that. And I don't think that that person was aware of the fact that our ambulance, we had a secondary ambulance. It was working towards that, and that was part of what was cut. Another communication issue. How do we get information out to people?
Good question. Okay. Nobody else has anything they'd like to offer? All right, well, I would like to thank you all for coming. Appreciate all the input, and we definitely understand the situation with public safety. If we had a magic wand and could create money, we would certainly do it, and there would be you guys wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. But we're going to try to figure out how we can raise some money and hopefully get things back on track. So thank you all for coming.